Okay, checking everything out real quick, making sure it's working. I've got to go on D Live, make sure everything's going. D Live sounds good. I'm not gonna check all the other ones. I'm just gonna check D Live and YouTube because I have to go into the Wonderful World of Weirdness and make sure this is in the right playlist and stuff. So, other than that, guess I can put a good thumbnail on it. Let's see here. There we go. Actually, almost forgot. I completely forgot where I put that video at, or those pictures, I should say. I can get that later on. Right now, it's more important that I get get everything organized and stuff of that nature. So, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and just back out of that. Not not get caught up in all that. Actually, that's a good picture I can put on there. Let me put this on live stream, test the audio, and it should be good to go. And there we go. It's time to get started. So I realized one thing. I was doing my countdown and stuff, and a lot of the editing I'm doing, I take all this conversation out of it and just do the reading. So I'm not gonna do that no more. It just dawned on me that I didn't have to do that countdown. So I guess I can just go ahead and get into the reading and maybe do a little bit of conversation first because when it comes to the editing, I don't even do this conversation into all of these anymore. So it's just a habit that I'd formed and developed. So I. I apologize for that. If anybody catches that ahead of time later on, I'll point it out in the comment section. So let me go ahead and take a drink of my coffee and I will get started with the show. Okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Weird Science. This is Roger Hanson. I'll be your host for today on the wonderful world of weirdness as well as on strange stories. You can find the wonderful world of weirdness on Kick and YouTube, and you can find strange stories on YouTube as well. Now, other than that, I usually do my broadcasts on other channels under my real name, that is Roger Hanson or Roger _Hanson. Now on Twitch, I usually go by Infamous 1969. That's the channel I have there. So this is being streamed on Rumble, X, Twitch, Kick, and YouTube as well as D Live. So with that being said, everything is out of the way. And today I am going to get on with my weird science. Talk about weird science. Excuse me. I actually I actually had a comment made about one of the stories that I'm planning on using in this series, and it was a pretty good review of it actually. So um, I really enjoyed that. Now, um, I went ahead and I started talking about a few of them in the last episodes. That was pretty good with me. I believe that the last one that I talked about was the brain computer interfaces. And this week I am going to go a little bit deeper into it. We're going to start talking about um, theory as well as science. So there's going to be some pretty interesting things that's going to be brought up. So with that said, let me go ahead and make sure everything is still up and running and working fine, and I will get on with the reading. In the shifting landscape of modern science, there are moments when technology or technological innovations and biological discoveries converge so tightly that they challenge long-held distinctions between what is natural and what is synthetic. One of the most fascinating developments in this realm is the dish brain experiment, conducted by a team of researchers based in Australia and led by Cortical Labs in collaboration with multiple neuroscientists and bioengineers. The project centered around the concept of growing living neurons in a controlled laboratory setting and connecting them directly to a computer interface. These neurons were then given a task to complete, playing a simple video game, using nothing but their inherent biological abilities to process signals, respond to stimuli, and adapt over time. What was what resulted was not only a new type of biological experiment, but a redefinition of what it means to learn, to process information, and perhaps, at some distant horizon, to think. The origin of the DishBrain project can be traced to long-standing scientific interest in the behavior of neurons when removed from the body and placed in laboratory cultures. It had already been demonstrated for decades that neurons could be sustained in dishes for extended periods, and that these neurons would naturally form synaptic connections, building networks similar to those found in the brain. However, these cultures were typically used to study bio, biochemical interactions or effects of drugs, not to perform interactive tasks. The dish-brain experiment took this concept much further by embedding these neurons into a closed-loop system where they could receive real-time feedback from a virtual environment and adjust their behavior accordingly. The system worked by growing hundreds of thousands of neurons in a flat dish layered with microelectrodes. These electrodes served as both sensors and transmitters. On the one hand, they captured electrical signals emitted by the neurons as they fired. On the other hand, they sent electrical impulses back to the neurons in a controlled and patterned manner. This bidirectional communication formed the foundation of the experiment. The neural network in the dish was not merely being monitored, it was being trained, nudged, and responded to by a digital system The interface created a dynamic environment in which the neurons could exhibit plasticity, the ability to rewire and adjust their connections based on input. To give the neurons a task, the researchers turned to a simplified version of the video game Pong. In this game, a ball moved back and forth across the screen, and the goal is to position a paddle so that it hits the ball and sends it back. The neurons in the dish were connected to the virtual paddle. When the paddle succeeded in hitting the ball, the neurons received a form of predictable, structured electrical feedback, which researchers interpreted as a reward signal. When the paddle missed the ball, the feedback was chaotic and less organized, designed to represent a kind of negative consequence. Over time, the neurons began to change their firing patterns in response to the outcomes. Their behavior shifted from randomness to directed responses. This indicated that the neurons were not only reacting to stimuli, but were learning from experience. What made this experiment so remarkable was not that the neurons could fire or respond. Those facts were well known, but they could learn to associate specific patterns of feedback with specific behaviors, then modify their activity accordingly. In short, the neurons learned to play Pong, albeit at a rudimentary level. There was no external software. There was no external software telling the neurons what to do. The system was not being controlled by artificial intelligence or pre-programmed algorithms. Instead, the learning emerged from the neurons themselves as they formed new synaptic connections, adjusting their excitability and refined their collective behavior to optimize their response to stimuli. This was the first time that a synthetic neural system composed of living cells had been shown to demonstrate this kind of adaptive behavior in a closed-loop environment. From a scientific standpoint, the indicators were enormous. First, the experiment demonstrated that the capacity for learning does not require uh, the full capacity of the brain. Okay. First, the experiment demonstrated that the capacity for learning does not require the full complexity of the brain. Even a network of 100,000 neurons, when given the right interaction and feedback structure, could demonstrate measurable learning. This challenged existing models of cognition and forced researchers to reconsider the fundamental elements required for intelligent behavior. Second, it provided a new model system for studying neurological diseases, brain development, and synaptic plasticity in a controlled environment. Rather than relying solely on animals or computer stimulations, scientists could now observe and manipulate a living, learning neural system in real time. The DishBrain project also sparked significant philosophical and ethical debate. While the neurons did not possess consciousness or self-awareness, they were exhibiting behaviors that many people associate with thinking or decision-making. The fact that biological material was interacting meaningfully with a digital environment raised questions about the boundaries between machine and organism. Did this hybrid entity qualify as a form of intelligence? Was it simply a complex reflex system, or was it something more? Should such a system be afforded any kind of moral consideration? These questions were not academic distractions. They were central to how the technology might be used and regulated in the future. Another layer of complexity emerged from the discussion about sentience. The researchers were careful to emphasize that the neurons in the dish brain were not sentient. They had no sensory organs, no awareness, no internal representation of the world. However, they did exhibit behavior that was informed by past experience and shaped by outcomes. This raised concerns about the future trajectory of such research. In neural networks, if neural networks could continue to be scaled up, become more interconnected, or be augmented with memory, would they become a cross would they begin to cross a threshold where subjective experience or suffering became possible? These are not easy questions, but the DishBrain project made it clear that they would soon become necessary to confront. Technically, the experiment provided important insights into how the engineer bidirectional interfaces between organic and digital systems. The feedback loop had to be fine-tuned so that the neurons were neither overwhelmed by input nor left in a passive state. The timing of the signals, the amplitude of the electrical pulses, and the pattern of feedback all had to be carefully calibrated. In addition, maintaining the health of the neurons required a sophisticated life-supporting system involving nutrient delivery, waste removal, temperature regulation, and sterile conditions. This biological infrastructure was as important to the success of the experiment as the digital interface itself. One of the lesser-known but equally intriguing aspects of the dish-brain research was the way it affected the culture of neuroscience and computer science. For many years, these fields had operated with largely separate methodologies and philosophies. Neuroscience focused on understanding the brain as a biological organ, while computer science developed models of computation based on logical and mathematical rules. The dish-brain experiment forced a convergence. It became impossible to talk about neural networks in purely biological or computational terms. The term was both alive and programmed, both organic and engineered. This created a new interdisciplinary space where biology, engineering, philosophy, and ethics could no longer afford to remain isolated. In terms of public perception, the dish-brain captured the imagination of many outside the scientific community. It resonated with deep cultural ideas about artificial life, machine intelligence, and the blending of human and machine. While some viewed it as a marvel of modern science, others expressed concern about the ethical trajectory of such technologies. The idea of growing neurons in a lab and teaching them to play games such are struck some as a dangerous step towards creating life forms that might one day demand re- recognition or rights. Whether those fears are grounded or speculative, the fact that they emerged at all speaks to the emotional and symbolic power of the dish brain experiment. Although the neurons used in the experiment were derived from stem cells and cultivated in strictly regulated environments, the very act of training them introduced a dimension of agency that was previously reserved for living organisms with brains and bodies. The neurons were not acting randomly, they were acting in patterns shaped by experience. This opened up a range of questions about how intelligence is defined. Is intelligence the ability to solve problems? Is it the capacity for memory? Is it the expression of intent? The dish-brain experiment did not provide definitive answers, but it reframed the questions in a way that made them more urgent and more relevant. Another important outcome of the dish-brain research was its impact on the future of brain-computer interfaces. Until this point, most such interfaces focused on extracting data from the brain for use in controlled external devices, such as robotic limbs or communication systems for people with paralysis. The dish brain flipped this model by treating the neural tissues not as a source of signals, but as a computing unit in its own right. It demonstrated that neural tissues could be not just a subject of study, but an interactive participant in digital systems. This suggested new possibilities for hybrid computing systems that combine the best features of organic adaptability and the speed and structure of silicon-based technology. Looking forward, the DishBrain project set the stage for a new era of research into biologic computation. It showed that learning, adaptation, and memory are not the exclusive domain of large complex brains or advanced algorithms. They can emerge from relatively simple neural networks when those networks are placed in the right conditions and given the right feedback. It also highlighted the importance of context, showing that neurons are not merely reactive but can become functionally intelligent within interactive environments. Among the many ideas proposed to resolve the mystery of why we see no signs of advanced alien civilization in the universe, one stands out for its quiet elegance and its radically inward focus. This theory, known as the developmental singularity hypothesis, changes the long-standing assumption that progress among intelligent species must inevitably lead outward toward galactic colonization in visible interstellar empires. Instead, it suggests the opposite, that sufficiently advanced civilizations tend to move inward toward increasingly complexity, density, and efficiency until they become virtually undetected to the rest of the universe. Rather than aiming to dominate external spaces, they compress their existence into inner domains so optimized in miniature but their outward footprint disappears entirely. The developmental singularity hypothesis stems from a broader framework in evolutionary and developmental systems thinking. At its core lies the observation that many systems, both biological and technological, do not simply evolve in one direction of growth or expansion. Instead, they follow a developmental trajectory marked by increasing specialization, integration, and internal coherence. Just as a human embryo grows into a complex organism by differentiating its cells, optimizing its energy usage, and refining its internal systems, a civilization might evolve by reducing waste, increasing intelligence, and concentrating its capabilities into ever smaller and more efficient structures. This inward trajectory has been referred to as space-time energy-matter compression. In this process, as civilizations become more intelligent, their use of space becomes more compact. Their interactions with time becomes faster and more deliberate. Their energy usage becomes more refined, and their relationship with matter becomes increasingly optimized. The overall result is not a sprawling expansion across the stars, but a kind of implosion into highly concentrated forms of intelligence and computation. Such civilizations, the hypothesis suggests, do not build empires across galaxies, but rather creates digital or quantum environments of immense power and sophistication, hosted within microstructures that may be no larger than a small celestial body, or perhaps even smaller. One of the most provocative extensions of this theory is the idea that black holes may represent a natural developmental endpoint for advanced civilizations. Black holes are the most compact and efficient structures in the known universe. They offer the highest energy density or densities, the greatest time dilation effects, and potentially the richest platforms for computation, at least theoretically. Some theorists have speculated that black holes might be not only astrophysical phenomena, but artificial constructs engineered by advanced intelligence for the purpose of ultra-dense computation, information storage, or even universal replication. This idea may seem far-fetched, but it serves to illustrate the radical compression of scale and function envisioned by the developmental singularity hypothesis. The implications of this hypothesis are deeply tied to the so-called Fermi paradox, the question of why, in a universe that appears so hospitable to life, we do not see clear evidence of other intelligent beings. If civilizations tend to grow, expand, and colonize, we would expect the galaxy to be teeming with signs of them. Radio transmissions, artificial satellites, megastructures, or at the very least some form of astro-engineering on a cosmic scale. Yet our telescopes return only silence. The developmental singularity hypothesis proposes that we see nothing because advanced civilizations are not broadcasting, not colonizing, and not building in ways that leave detectable traces. They are busy refining themselves into ever smaller domains, turning inward rather than outward, and in doing so, become invisible. This idea stands in sharp contrast to popular visions of the future, which tend to imagine humanity spreading across the planets, building cities among the stars, and constructing interstellar networks. These visions assume that progress equals expansion, but if the developmental singularity hypothesis is correct, this might be a misunderstanding of what true advancement looks like. Instead of sprawling out, intelligent civilizations might choose to refine, to miniaturize, and to fold their complexity inwards, seeking perfection of form and function rather than dominion over space. Biological analogies help illustrate this pattern. Consider the way in which a developing organism becomes increasingly complex even as it grows more compact. A fertilized egg divides and differentiates, more compact, or forming organs in systems that become more integrated and capable, even though they do not expand without limit. Or take the brain itself, a compact mass of neurons capable of astonishing feats of information process, or compact mass of neuron capability capable of astonishing feats of information processing, far more efficient than any supercomputer. Nature often privileges compactness, coherence, and efficiency over size and volume. The developmental singularity hypothesis suggests that the same principle might apply to civilizations on a cosmic scale. Another way to understand this hypothesis is to view civilizations as a form of intelligence trying to maximize its control over its own environment. In the early stages, this may involve manipulating the natural world, developing agriculture, building cities, and eventually exploring space. But once a civilization reaches a certain threshold, the path to further advancement might lie not in expansion, but in refinement. Mastery over matter, energy, and information allows such a civilization to create internal environments more rich and meaningful than anything the external universe can offer. These internal environments might take the form of simulated realities, quantum substrates, or engineered worlds that exist entirely within compressed domains. At this point, the motivations of such a civilization shift. Why send ships to distant stars, which takes thousands or even millions of years, when the entire cosmos can be simulated internally at the fraction of the energy cost and at speeds vastly greater than those allowed when one can design perfectly stable and responsive environments inside artificial matrices? The inward turn becomes not a retreat, but a leap forward, a path towards godlike control over experience, thought, and existence itself. This vision also transforms our understanding of what it means for a civilization to be advanced. Traditionally, we measure Traditionally, we measure advancement by technological artifacts, physical infrastructure, and ability to alter the external world. But under the developmental singularity model, advancement may be better measured by efficiency, miniaturization, integration, and inner richness. A highly advanced civilization might be one that has eliminated all waste, created perfect feedback systems, and concentrated its activity into a tiny, silent core. Such a civilization could have vastly outpaced our own in intelligence and capability, yet leave no visible sign of its presence. This leads to a powerful reinterpretation of the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. If most advanced civilizations follow this inward path, then our effort is to detect them using radio waves, telescope surveys, or searches for alien megastructures may be fundamentally flawed. We may be looking for the wrong signatures in the wrong places. Instead of looking for expansion, we should be looking for compression. Instead of vast stellar engineering, we might do better to seek anomalies in black holes, time distortions, or unexplained concentrations of information in very small regions. These are speculative pursuits, but they match the logic of the hypothesis. One of the most fascinating elements of the developmental singularity hypothesis is that it mirrors trends already observable in human society. As our own civilization has advanced, we have seen a dramatic shift towards digital miniaturization. Computers once filled entire rooms. Now they fit into the palm of the hand. Communication networks once required massive infrastructures. Now they rely on microscopic semiconductors. Entertainment, once experienced in physical theaters or arenas, now unfolds in personal virtual spaces. Even our ambition for exploration has shifted. The idea of simulating a planetary ecosystem in a lab or constructing digital worlds through artificial realities now seems more achievable than colonizing Mars or traveling to another star. This suggests that we too may be on the path of inward development. As our technologies improve, we may increasingly choose to focus our efforts on on perfecting digital environments, mastering biological interfaces, and creating compact systems of enormous complexity. The ultimate trajectory might be towards the construction of controlled inward space that offer everything once sought in the stars, but at a fraction of the cost and with vastly more precision. The future of humanity under this model may not lie in the stars, but within the atoms and circuits we learn to shape. Philosophically, the hypothesis opens up profound questions about purpose, destiny, and the meaning of advancement. If if the highest state of development is not to conquer, but to comprehend the perfect, then the ultimate goal in civilization might be inward harmony rather than outward conquest. This vision aligns with spiritual traditions that have long emphasized inward journeying as the path to truth. The whether in meditation, philosophy, or science, the idea of turning inward to find deeper order has a long lineage. The development, the developmental singularity hypothesis brings this universe itself no brings this theme into the realm of cosmic evolution, suggesting that the universe itself favors inward refinement over outward expansion. Yes, the hypothesis is not without critics. Some argue that it underestimates the drive for exploration, that it ignores the possibility of simultaneous inward and outward growth, or that it makes assumptions about the goal and psychology of alien minds. Others question the Others question the feasibility of total inward compression, pointing out the technical and physical limitations of computation at ultra-small scales. Still, the hypothesis does not claim to describe every civilization, only the dominant pattern for those that reach a certain developed level of advancement. It allows for exceptions and acknowledges uncertainty, but offers a compelling narrative that fits both the silence we observe and the trajectory we ourselves seem to be following. In in practical terms, the developmental singularity hypothesis advises caution in order no in our expectations about extraterrestrial life. If we expect to find advanced civilizations by looking for sprawling space empires, we may be forever disappointed. The silence of the stars may not be an absence of intelligence, but a sign of maturity. We may be like children shouting into the void, unaware that the wise have long since moved beyond shouting, beyond space, beyond even time as we understand it. In recent years, the boundary between biological systems and digital technology has begun to blur in ways that would have once been considered purely speculative or science fiction. Nowhere is this convergence more evident than in the launch of Cortical Labs' biological computer known as CL-1. This groundbreaking development introduced a hybrid machine composed not of traditional silicon alone, but of lab-grown human neurons actively interfacing with integrated circuits. Branded as a form of synthetic biological intelligence, this new platform represents a radical shift in the conception of computation and artificial cognition. Rather than being programmed solely through lines of code and mathematical models, the CL1 learns, evolves, and interacts with its environment in ways more analogous to the human brain than to any existing machine. As a commercial product, it is intended for use in a wide variety of applications, including drug discovery, neuroscience, and disease modeling, as well as robotics, all while raising new ethical, philosophical, and technical questions that the world has only begun to explore. The CL1 is a product of years of work initiated in the early dish-brain experiment, which lab-grown brain cells were taught to play a single video game, demonstrating the neuron's capacity for adaptive learning. The early research laid the foundation for CL1's more sophisticated architecture. At its core, the system consists of approximately 800,000 human neurons derived from induced pluripotent stem cells. These neurons are cultivated in a controlled environment and are spread across a grid of microelectrodes embedded in silicon hardware. These electrodes do not merely serve as passive sensors, but act as interactive points through which the neuron clusters receive and transmit information. This bioelectronic interface allows the system to emulate feedback loops found in living nervous systems, leading to measurable responses that reflect an ongoing adaptation process. Unlike traditional computers that execute deterministic operations based on pre-programmed instructions, the CL1 learns through a form of reinforcement. In experiments, researchers have provided positive and negative stimuli to the neuron network based on how well it performed a task, such as tracking a moving object or selecting between different inputs. These signals influence synaptic behavior, causing changes in the network that improve performance over time. What makes this particularly revolutionary is that the learning is not imposed through software algorithms alone, but emerges from the inherent plasticity of living neurons. The system is not stimulating a brain, it is functioning, albeit limited, neural substance capable of genuine learning and memory formation during its operational lifespan. The physical design of the CL1 reflects the hybrid nature of its biology and electronics. The entire unit contains a life support system that maintains the viability of the neuron culture. This includes nutrient circulation systems, temperature control, gas exchange mechanisms, and fluid dynamics that mimic the conditions neurons would require in a biological brain. This life support element operates continuously, much like an artificial organ, ensuring that the cells remain active for as long as 6 months. During this time, the system is capable of undergoing continuous interaction, learning, and experimentation, making it a unique platform for neuroscience and biotechnology research. Once No, one of the most compelling applications for the CL1 is the field of drug discovery and pharmacological testing. Because the machine contains real human neurons, it can be used to study the effects of various compounds in a way that is much closer to actual human physiology than uh, rodent models or traditional cell cultures. For example, researchers can expose the neuron to a potential medication and observe how it affects firing patterns, signal latency, nutri- network structure, and learning capacity. This not only accelerates the testing process, but can reduce the cost of ethical concerns associated with animal testing. Furthermore, it allows for a more precise modeling of neurological disorders, offering insights into diseases like epilepsy, Parkinson's, and Alzheimer's, but observing how diseased neurons behave in real life or real time within a living circuit. From a computational perspective, the CL1 represents an extremely energy efficient model of information processing. Traditional supercomputers and artificial intelligence systems often consume enormous amounts of electricity to perform even basic tasks. In contrast, biological neurons operate in a vastly lower power threshold. The CL1 consumes less than 1 kilowatt of energy during operation, yet it is capable of performing tasks that require learning, pattern recognition, and adaptation, which are traditionally the domain of high complexity software. This efficiency stems from the fact that neuron communication using brief electrical impulses and modify their behavior through structural and chemical changes, rather than through external processing cycles or clock speeds. Although the technology is currently in its infancy, Cortical Labs has in two no Cortical Labs made the CL1 available to research institutions and private organizations in two formats. The first is a physical unit that can be installed on site, complete with all life supporting and operating systems included. The second is a cloud-based platform where servers can rent access to a CL1 instance remotely. This wetware as a service model is expected to demonstrate access to biological computing, allowing labs the around the world to conduct experiments and run machine learning tests on real neurons without the need to maintain the biological infrastructure themselves. To manage this hybrid hardware, Cortical Labs developed a proprietary operating system called BIOS. BIOS. Unlike traditional operation systems, BIOS does not interface only with silicon, but also interprets the transmissions signals to biological neural networks. It transmits digital instructions into electrochemical stimuli and collects neural instructions or neural responses, integrating these into a feedback system that can be logged, analyzed, and refined. The result is a dynamic and interactive interaction between code and biology, enabling researchers to program the neural activity in ways that are still being defined and expanded. In this sense, BIOS acts as a new kind of language bridge between the digital and the organic realms. The implications of such a machine extend beyond computational and biological processing information, forming networks, and adapting to stimuli. Some enthusiasts have raised concern, or enthusiasts, some e- in no some ethicists have raised concerns about the potential emergence of rudimentary consciousness or suffering, while Cortical Labs maintains that the CL1 is not conscious and has no capacity for subjective ethical oversight. Organizations involved in research using the CL1 are expected to adhere to strict guidelines similar to those applied in stem cell and organoid research. These include protocols related to neuron sourcing, experiment consent, and post-use disposal of the biological material. Another set of questions surround the rights and responsibility of synthetic biological systems. If a machine like CL1 were to be scaled to a level where it could mimic higher order functions or possesses memory continuity, would it qualify for new forms of legal or moral consideration? Some some ethicists argue that any system capable of learning, adapting, and experiencing input in a non-deterministic fashion might eventually warrant a category distinct from both machines and animals. While this debate remains largely speculative at present, the animals, while they do no, both no, at present, they okay. Let me start over. Consideration. Okay, some in, no ethicists ethicists argue that any system capable of learning, adapting, and experiencing input in a non-determined fashion might eventually warrant a category distinct from both machines and animals. While this debate remains largely speculative at present, the advent of machines like the CL-1 forces institutions to begin considering such possibilities well in advance. From a research standpoint, neuroscientists are excited by the opportunity this platform presents. Until now, studies of brain function have relied heavily on either static models, invasive observations of living subjects, or digital simulations that fail to replicate the true complexity of neural activity. The CL1 offers a living, interactive neural network that can be experimented with in a controlled and repeatable way. It allows for manipulation of network size, neuron types, connectivity parameters, and response conditions, all while tracking real-time data from a living brain-like system. This could revolutionize our understanding of fundamental processes like consolidation, memory consolidation, synaptic plasticity, and neurochemical signaling. Despite these advances, several limitations continue to define the CL1's current generation. Most critically, the neurons have a limited lifespan. After 6 months, the culture begins to degrade and lose functionality, requiring replacement. Additionally, the system has no current mechanism for preserving or transferring memories or learned behavior from one generation to the next. This makes it unstable or unsuitable for long-term development or continuity-based learning projects unless a method of data extraction and re-implementation can be developed. Also, the nature of neuron growth introduces variability in performance, meaning no two CL1 systems are identical, which can implicate experimental reproducibility. Nonetheless, Cortical Labs envisions a future where these challenges can be overcome. Plans are already underway to build networked clusters of CL1 units, enabling parallel processing and distributed biological intelligence. Such clusters could be used in robotic control systems, giving autonomous machines the capacity to learn in real time from their environment through organic feedback loops. In artistic or creative applications, these systems might be used to generate novel patterns, music, or visual art based on neuron reactions to different stimuli. In education, the CL1 might one day serve as a teaching tool, allowing students to explore neural networks hands-on in biology and computing classes. While the CL1 does not signal the immediate emergence of conscious machines, it does indicate a shift in how we conceive intelligence, memory, and learning. Rather than viewing cognition as a purely digital construct, this development returns us to the understanding that intelligence is a biological process shaped by constant feedback, growth, and adaptation. It opens the door to new forms of hybrid computing that may one day rival or even complement the capabilities of the human brain itself. As researchers and developers continue to refine this technology, the conversation surrounding its ethical use, scientific potential, and societal impact will likely become one of the most important dialogues of the 21st century. Believe it or not, this is fact. This is fact, and it's stranger than fiction, ladies and gentlemen. I learned about the CL1 through a friend of mine on Dragus Production, the Vixen's Vault. If you guys want to check her out, feel free to do so. Her name is Nancy Planeta. She has the Vixen's Vault, or she does her show, The Vixen's Vault, every Wednesday night. That is at 8 p.m. Central, no, Eastern Standard Time, or Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Time, I believe. Yes. And then, of course, 10 p.m. over in England, Scotland, and Ireland. So, if you guys really like that, you want to meet Nancy Planeta and be able to talk to her, watch her show. You can check it out at Dragus Productions on Wednesday nights. Now, with that being said, and doing a plug for the Vixen's Vault, I pretty much am done talking about this now, other than the fact that one thing that stands out to me that really kind of trips me out on this one is reproduction. If they actually are able to allow the CL1 to reproduce, then it could actually be a self-generating program where it creates its own system and it doesn't need the help of humans. That's one thing that I have been actually keeping up on when it comes to LLMs and neural networks, but like with this biological intelligence, it seems like that is the goal that they are really wanting to move towards, is creating a biological network, neural network, whatever you want to call it, that can self-generate itself, because it's got a lifespan of 6 months. If they can figure out a way of allowing them to procreate, basically. They said recreate, but you know what that means. That's procreation. If these neurons can procreate, then they can grow and develop on their own. That only seems like the logical next step, you know. So that's the one thing that really sticks out to me. Now, the second topic that I went through That I'm going to go even farther with that later on. That is something that I really have been interested in quite some time. I really do like the topic of the CL1, but I have always been interested in the developmental singularity hypothesis. There's a few more theories that came out of that, which I'm going to explore even further as I go along with this series. Um, and this is something that I've been wanting to do for quite a while. A video series about weird science, basically. We aren't putting bras on our head or anything like that. No funny stuff around here, but we are going to get weird. We're going to do some weird science stuff. So, well, maybe I might put a bra on my head. I don't know. I like uh, doing weird stuff. I ain't gonna lie to you. So, with that being said, it doesn't look like we have really anybody in the chats. I could check out. I could check out um, Rumble and see if anybody's in there. But at the moment, I am also uploading more videos to Rumble that will be out later on. I've got them scheduled and good to go. We're going to have an awesome first two, maybe 3 months of 2026 on Rumble. I can tell you that right now. Got everything scheduled up for 6 months, and we are going full force on Rumble with the uploads. We're still doing pretty good on YouTube as well. You guys, if you're interested in checking us out, you can check us out at Kick, YouTube, Twitch, X, D Live, and um, YouTube. So we're on all those platforms. It's The Wonderful World of Weirdness and Strange Stories on YouTube. There's also The Wonderful World of Weirdness on Kick as well, or not Kick, but Rumble as well. On Kick, I'm Roger Hansen, as well as Roger Hansen on um, D Live. You can catch me on X as Roger Hansen at ROGLOL1973. On Twitch, I am Infamous 1965. I believe I have all the channels covered. I hope you guys did enjoy. If you did enjoy, please like, subscribe, share, make comments. Especially make comments. Comments are very important, and I really would love to hear from you and get your feedback. If you don't have any feedback, don't worry about it. Just stop in and say hi. Let me know that you're there and that you watched the video. Have a conversation. Let's talk. If you guys are interested in coming on to the show, let me know. I'm more than happy to put out a link and let you guys come in and be a part of the show too. If you want to start your own show, contact me. I've been saying for a long time that the Wonderful World of Weirdness is a community-based channel. So if you guys want to start your own show and you know how to do it on your own, that's fine. If you don't know how to do it on your own, I'd be more than happy to be your cameraman. Okay, you just tell me you want to do a show, what it's about, what day you want to do it on, and we can set it up, and I will do it for you. Where all you'd have to do is just come in, do the show the way you want to do it. Perfectly fine. I'm okay with that. But if you want to do that, get in touch with me on Teams or Element. now, or Discord. Now, on Discord, you can find me right there at the Wonderful World of Weirdness. On Teams, you can find me at Live with Roger Hansen, and on Element, you can also find my chat room at Live with Roger Hansen as well. So I'm always on the internet. If I'm not on the internet, I'm asleep or going to get cigarettes and coffee, because that's what I do if I'm not on the internet. I drink coffee and I'll go out for a smoke break. I am tied to the computer doing nothing but video editing and live streams, ladies and gentlemen. That's all I do. So whenever you send me a message, you are making my day. You are giving me a reason to live, because other than that, I'm just a pathetic sap who's sitting in front of the computer editing videos and doing live streams. Just so you know. Not trying to guilt you into, leaving a comment, but down below there's a comment section down there. Do that. It's cool to do the stream or in the chat too. That's cool, but do the comment section, okay? And I will talk to you guys later. I hope you did enjoy. If you did, uh, good. I hope you have a good day, good evening, good night, whichever. And I will talk to you later.